I'm Annette.
I still remember that Memorial Day like it was yesterday. The sun was beating down on the red clay, and the cicadas were in full chorus. My mother's yard was set up like a postcard, with American flags and a long folding table covered in a checkered cloth. The grill was smoking, and coolers of sweet tea and beer were sweating in the shade. It was supposed to be a family gathering, a time for celebration, but instead, it turned into a showdown that would change everything. I walked in with my daughter, Mia, by my side. My overnight bag slung over my shoulder, and inside it was a manila envelope filled with the truth. The whole family was there, Aunt Vivian, Uncle Leo, and all the cousins. My mother, Clara, was moving through the crowd with a mason jar of sweet tea, smiling like the perfect grandmother. She introduced Mia to everyone, talking about how she'd been raising her since she was a baby. As the barbecue went on, I watched as Mia ate more than any other child there. Third rib, second helping of potato salad, a full ear of corn. It broke my heart because I knew this was the most food she'd had in a long time. Then, Aunt Vivian leaned over to Aunt Iris and said, loud enough for half the table, "Lord, that child eats like she hasn't had a meal in a week." My mother laughed it off, saying, "Oh, she just loves barbecue." But Mia looked up at me with barbecue sauce on her chin and said, in a small voice that carried farther than she knew, "Mommy, this is the most food I've eaten in a long time." That was the moment everything changed. I felt a shift inside me, a quiet certainty. I knew it was time to expose the truth. I stood up slowly, and my mother's smile flickered. She wasn't used to being interrupted.
Mom, I said.
I appreciate you saying that. And I think everyone here deserves to know what giving up everything actually looked like. I reached into my bag and set the manila envelope on the table. I opened it and began to speak. For 7 years, I have sent Mom $40,000 a year to take care of Mia. That's $280,000 in total. The number spread through the table like a shockwave. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at me. I pulled out the first photograph, showing Mom's kitchen, open cabinets filled with ramen, cereal, and ketchup, and a refrigerator with nothing but milk and mustard. "This is what my daughter eats," I said, my voice steady. I then showed them Mia's closet, filled with donated clothes from the local church, shoes that were too small, and a comforter so thin you could almost see through it. I sent $40,000 a year, and my daughter wore hand-me-downs from strangers. Next, I showed them my brother Ethan's renovated trailer. A new metal roof, a wooden deck with a railing, and a shiny charcoal truck parked in the driveway. It was clear where the money had gone. Finally, I pulled out the petition my mother had filed with the county courthouse to take legal guardianship of Mia. Using my absence, the absence I endured to earn the money I sent her, as grounds. The table erupted in silence. My mother shot to her feet, yelling that I was twisting everything. Ethan stood up too, his face red with anger. But Aunt Vivian's voice cut through the chaos. "Sit down, both of you. Sit down." Uncle Leo held the trailer photo next to the kitchen photo and looked at my mother. "Clara, that truck is brand new. Where did Ethan get the money?" My mother started to cry, saying that Ethan needed help, that he was going to end up on the streets. But Aunt Iris, who had always been my mother's biggest defender, stared at the photo of Mia's closet and said, "Clara, that child is skin and bones." My mother then turned to Mia, reaching out and saying, "Tell them, baby. Tell them Grandma takes good care of you." Mia looked at her grandmother, then at me, and slowly shook her head. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan shoved his chair back and stormed off. My mother knelt in front of Mia and said, "You want to stay with Grandma, right? This is your home. Your school, your friends, everything is here." Mia looked at her for a long time, then looked up at me and said clearly, "I want to go home with my mommy." My mother's hand dropped, and she sat back on her heels. Aunt Vivian came over and hugged me, saying, "You should have come to us sooner, honey. We didn't know." I didn't know either, not until Mia told me. Let me take you back 7 years, to the week I buried my husband, Ryan. He was a hard, working construction worker, but one fateful Tuesday, he was electrocuted at a job site outside of our town. He was only 29 and Mia was just 3 months old. I was sitting in the rocking chair he'd built for us, nursing Mia, when 2 men from the contracting company knocked on the door. I don't remember what they said. All I remember is Mia crying because I squeezed her too tight. The life insurance paid out $150,000, but it didn't seem like much when you thought about how long it had to last. I had just finished my nursing program at the top of my class, but I had no experience. No hospital in our county was hiring. The closest opening was at a community hospital in a city 4 hours away on the night shift with 12-hour rotations for nights a week. I couldn't bring a 3-month-old to that city. I had no family there, no daycare that ran from midnight to noon, and no one to call if a shift ran late. The day after the funeral, my mother drove down. She held Mia on the porch while I packed boxes, and she said the words I needed to hear. "Bring Mia to me. You go work. I'll take care of her like she's my own." She brushed my hair behind my ear, just like she used to when I was a little girl, and added, "You don't need to worry about money for Mia. Just send what you can." So I did. I handed my 3-month-old daughter to my mother and drove 4 hours through the rain. I told myself it was temporary. That first year was hell. I worked 4 nights a week, from 7 p.m.
M.
to 7 a.m.
M.
I slept from 8 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon in a tiny studio apartment that smelled like mildew and other people's cooking. Every dollar I didn't absolutely need went home. $3,300 a month wired to my mother's account on the first of every month, like clockwork. That's $40,000 a year. I ate peanut butter sandwiches and hospital cafeteria leftovers. I didn't buy new scrubs until the old ones split at the seams. But every night before my shift, I FaceTimed Mia. She was learning to walk, then to talk, and then to say "Mama" into the phone screen because that was the only place she ever saw me. My mother would hold the phone and smile, and behind them, the living room looked clean. Mia would be wearing a cute outfit I didn't recognize, with tags still half attached. "She's doing great, honey," Mom would say. "We went to the park today. Had ice cream after." She would text me photos of Mia at the playground, in a stroller at the grocery store, or in a little sundress, laughing at something off camera. Those photos were just enough to keep the guilt at bay, but looking back, I should have noticed the signs. In the second year, I came home one Friday in October. Mia was 16 months old, toddling around the kitchen in corduroy overalls I'd seen on my last few visits. The knees were stained, and one strap was safety, pinned where the button had popped off. "Mom, didn't you get her fall clothes?" "I sent extra last month," I said. She didn't even blink. "Oh. She grows so fast. I haven't had time to shop. You know how it is." I left $500 cash on the kitchen counter with a note for Mia's clothes. But when I came back 6 weeks later, Mia was still wearing the same overalls and the $500 was nowhere to be seen. That same weekend, a new truck pulled into the driveway. It was shiny, charcoal gray, with chrome running boards. Ethan stepped out like he owned the place. "Ethan got a new truck?" I asked. My mother wiped her hands on a dish towel without looking up. "He's doing better. Found a job." Ethan walked in, opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, and plopped down on the couch. He didn't say hello to me, and he didn't even look at Mia. When he needed something, he leaned into the kitchen doorway and said, "Ma, you got any cash? I got to fill up." She opened her purse and handed him 2 $100 bills, like it was nothing. Like it was routine. He left without a word to either of us. I stood at the sink, washing Mia's sippy cup, and noticed the shelves above the stove. There were fewer cans than last time, and the fruit bowl was empty. And then I saw a letter on the counter stamped with a county courthouse seal. My mother snatched it up. "Just junk mail, honey," she said, and slid it into her apron pocket, changing the subject. By the 3rd year, I started to notice the walls my mother had built around Mia's life. I called Mia's preschool one afternoon to ask about her progress report. The receptionist put me on hold, then came back sounding apologetic. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have Mrs. Clara listed as the primary contact. She's asked us to direct all communication through her." I sat in my car outside the hospital and stared at the phone. Then I called my mother. Mom, why does the school only have your information? I just didn't want them bothering you at work, honey. You need your sleep.
You work so hard, she said.
I'd like to be on the contact list, too, I said. Of course.
I'll take care of it, she replied.
But she didn't. 2 months later, nothing had changed. That's when I realized I didn't know the name of Mia's pediatrician, her vaccination schedule, or if she had a best friend. Every time I asked, my mother had an answer ready. She's doing wonderful. The doctor says she's perfect. She talks about you all the time. But if I pressed for specifics, the warmth in her voice would shift just a little. You trust me, don't you? I raised you. It was like a gate, and every time I heard it, I stepped back. In the 4th year, on a hot Saturday in July, I pulled into my mother's driveway and saw a neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, watering her hydrangeas. She looked at me and stopped mid-spray. You must be Annette, she said. I've been living next to your mom for about 3 years now. How's Mia doing, sweetheart? She asked, and the question didn't sound like small talk. It sounded like concern.
She's great.
Mom takes good care of her, I replied. Mrs. Jenkins held my gaze for a beat too long, then nodded slowly and turned back to her flowers. That's good. That's real good. Something in her voice stuck with me. When I went inside, Mia was sitting on the living room floor watching cartoons, all alone. The kitchen light was off. I flipped it on and opened the pantry. There was a box of store-brand cereal, 2 packs of ramen, a bottle of ketchup and salt. The fridge had a carton of milk 3 days from expiration for eggs and a squeeze bottle of ketchup. That was it. I stood there doing the math. $3,300 a month, and this was all there was? Then my mother walked in, arms full of Walmart bags. I just went shopping.
See, got everything we need, she said.
She unpacked with an efficiency that made me suspicious. Later, I found the Walmart receipt crumpled near the trash. It was only $45, $20 for the whole month. In the 5th year, I did something I'd never done before. I showed up without calling first. I'd swapped a shift with another nurse and drove straight down. I got to my mother's house at 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening. The porch light was off, and the front door was unlocked. Inside, the TV was playing to an empty room. Then I heard the sound of a fork scraping a bowl. Mia was sitting at the kitchen table in her pajamas, eating instant ramen by herself. The overhead light was buzzing, and no one else was in the house. Hey, baby girl, I said, kneeling beside her. Where's Grandma? She went to Uncle Ethan's.
She goes there a lot at night, she said.
I called my mother. She picked up on the 6th ring, her voice tight. Oh, I just ran over for a minute. Ethan needed help with something. I'm coming right back. I sat on the couch with Mia in my lap and waited. My mother walked through the door 2 hours and 14 minutes later. Her eyes were red, and her purse was open, with her wallet looking thinner than before. What happened, Mom? I asked. Ethan had a rough night. He lost some money. I had to calm him down, she said. Lost money, how? I pressed. She pressed her lips together. Just things. Don't worry about Ethan. He's your brother. I looked at the kitchen. There was an empty bowl in the sink and a ramen wrapper on the counter. My 5-year-old daughter had made her own dinner while my mother was out giving money to my brother. As I tucked Mia into bed, she murmured something half, a sleep that sent ice down my spine. I don't want to go to Uncle Ethan's trailer. It smells bad there. I sat on the edge of her bed for a long time. I was sending $40,000 a year, and my daughter was eating ramen alone in the dark. The next morning, I told my mother, Mom, I want to bring Mia to the city. I'll find daycare. I'll switch to day shifts. I can make it work. My mother was buttering toast. The knife stopped, and she didn't look up right away. When she did, the woman staring back at me wasn't the kind-hearted mother who'd comforted me after Ryan's death. This one had an edge. You're going to uproot that child? She has school here, friends, her doctor, she said. I'm her mother, I replied. A mother who's 4 hours away 4 nights a week, she countered. She set the knife down with a click. A judge would see a woman who was absent for 5 years trying to take a child from the only stable home she's ever known. Judge? I asked, shocked. I'm just saying, if it comes to that, she said, folding the dish towel neatly. I've talked to someone. You should know that. I understood. If I tried to take Mia, my mother would fight me in court. And she had 5 years of daily custody, a local address, a school enrollment, and a pediatrician on record, all in her name. My name was only on a bank transfer. I drove back to the city with my hands shaking on the wheel. For the next 2 years, I kept sending the money, kept visiting, and kept smiling because I was planning.
I just didn't know it yet.
Then, on Mia's 7th birthday, I drove down with the back seat full of presents. A pink dress, new sneakers, and a stack of books she'd asked for during our FaceTime calls. I walked into my mother's house expecting at least a small party. What I found was a sheet cake from Walmart, a few inflated balloons taped to the wall, and no guests. Not a single friend from school. Ethan was there, wearing a new polo shirt and a fancy watch. He sat on the recliner, scrolling his phone, and didn't even get up. Mia came running to me, and my heart broke in two. I was overjoyed to have her in my arms, but I could feel how light she was. She was wearing a winter coat in May, with a broken zipper and a torn seam on the right shoulder. Baby, where's the jacket I sent last month?
I asked.
Mia just shrugged. We sang happy birthday, and my mother held up her phone to record it, smiling like she had nothing to hide. Ethan ate 2 slices of cake without looking up. Then Mia pulled me into the hallway. She tugged my sleeve hard and leaned up on her toes. Her voice was barely a breath. Mommy, don't send Grandma any more money. Just follow her. You'll see. I looked down at my 7-year-old daughter, with her thin face, old coat, and eyes that knew too much. What do you mean, baby? She shook her head fast. Just follow her tomorrow, please. From the kitchen, I heard Ethan say, Ma, I need to talk to you later. It's urgent. My mother nodded, her eyes cutting sideways to make sure I hadn't heard. But I had. And I decided to stay one more day. The next morning, I told my mother I had to head back early for a shift. I hugged Mia at the door and whispered in her ear, I'm not leaving, baby. I'll be close. I pulled out of the driveway, turned right, and parked 3 houses down behind a church van. I could see my mother's front door in the rearview mirror. At 9:15, she walked Mia to the bus stop for summer camp, waved goodbye, and went back inside. 10 minutes later, she came out with her purse, got in her car, and headed east. I followed, keeping 3 car lengths back.
She never checked.